Have you ever seen your entire future walking toward you on a beach and realized you'd already lost it 2 years ago? Hank White had everything a man could want. Billions in the bank, a company that shaped the future, and a reputation that opened every door. But standing barefoot in the sand in Maui, watching his ex-girlfriend walk by with a toddler on her hip, he saw something that made his billion-dollar empire feel worthless. The child had his eyes, those same impossible blue eyes staring back at him, eyes he'd never seen before, belonging to a son he didn't know existed. In that moment, everything Hank thought mattered. The board meetings, the Forbes covers, the late nights building an empire crumbled like sand through his fingers. Because while he was busy becoming someone important, he'd missed becoming someone's father. This is the story of a man who had to lose everything to find what actually mattered. A story about second chances, broken hearts, and whether you can rebuild yourself into someone worth believing in. The question is, when you're given a choice between the life you built and the life you should have had, which one do you choose? The late afternoon light in Maui hit different than anywhere else Hank had been, and he'd been everywhere. Golden, thick, the kind of light that made everything look like it belonged in a frame. He stood barefoot in the sand, Canon EOS R5 hanging from his neck, expensive and useless. The horizon was perfect. The water was perfect. The whole goddamn sunset was perfect. He hadn't taken a single shot in 20 minutes. The shutter button felt foreign under his thumb. He'd bought the camera 3 months ago in Tokyo, told himself he needed a hobby that wasn't work. Something to do with his hands besides signing contracts and answering emails at 2 in the morning. Photography seemed safe, impersonal. You pointed, you clicked, you moved on, except he couldn't move on from anything. The Grand Wiley Resort spread out behind him like a monument to excess, pools and waterfalls and people who had money, but not enough to really disappear. Hank had the presidential suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, a balcony overlooking the ocean, a bed he never slept in. He'd been here 4 days, hadn't talked to anyone except the bartender who made his old-fashioned too sweet, and the concierge who kept recommending excursions he'd never take. This was vacation. This was what normal people did when they needed a break. He lifted the camera again, aimed at nothing in particular. Through the viewfinder, the beach looked even more artificial, too beautiful, too deliberate, like someone had photoshopped real life. A couple walked past holding hands, laughing about something he couldn't hear. He lowered the camera. The sand was still warm from the day, fine and white, the kind that got everywhere no matter how careful you were. His feet had started to burn, but he didn't move. Pain was something concrete. Pain was better than the hollow feeling that had taken up permanent residence in his chest since Chicago, since the IPO, since he became a name instead of a person. Hank White, 35, CEO of CipherCore Technologies, net worth somewhere north of $3 billion depending on the market. His face had been on the cover of Forbes twice, Wired 3 times, and that one unfortunate profile in Vanity Fair where they made him sound like he'd invented loneliness. He hadn't invented it. He'd just perfected it. The breeze picked up, salt and something floral he couldn't name. His shirt, linen, white, expensive, wrinkled because he'd pulled it straight from his suitcase, flapped against his back. He should go inside. Shower. Order room service he wouldn't eat. Stare at his laptop until the screen burned into his retinas. That's when he saw her. Not saw, recognized. The difference hit him like a punch to the solar plexus, all the air leaving his lungs at once. Skylar. She was maybe 30 yards down the beach, walking slowly, feet in the surf, and she wasn't alone. There was a kid, a baby. No, a toddler, maybe 2 years old on her hip, tiny legs kicking, hands reaching for the water. The camera slipped from Hank's fingers. He didn't hear it hit the sand, didn't feel the strap catch on his neck. Everything had narrowed to a single point. Her, Skylar Scott. Blonde hair longer than he remembered, sun-bleached to almost white at the ends, pulled back in a messy knot. She wore a blue sundress, simple, the kind she used to live in during summer. Her shoulders were tan. She was smiling at the kid, saying something he couldn't hear, pointing at something in the water. The kid laughed, a sound that carried over the waves, clear and bright. Hank's legs started moving before his brain caught up. 10 steps, 20. Close enough now to see details he didn't want to see. The curve of her jaw, the freckles across her nose that always got darker in the sun, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear with her free hand, a gesture so familiar it physically hurt. And the kid. Light hair, almost blonde, pale skin, eyes that Hank couldn't see from this distance but already knew would be blue. His stomach dropped. Skylar turned, saw him. Her whole body went rigid, the smile vanishing like someone had flipped a switch. The kid kept squirming, oblivious, trying to grab a handful of her hair. They stared at each other across 15 feet of sand that might as well have been the Grand Canyon. Hank opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His throat had closed up, his pulse hammering in his ears louder than the ocean. She looked different. Older, but not in a bad way. Just more solid, more present, like she'd figured out something fundamental about being alive that he'd never managed to grasp. The hollowness in her eyes from before was gone, replaced by something harder, wary. Skylar. His voice came out rough, barely audible. She shifted the kid higher on her hip. The toddler chose that moment to look at Hank, head tilting, curious. Blue eyes, so blue they were almost translucent in the golden light, like looking in a mirror. Hank. Her voice was flat, careful, the way you'd talk to a stranger who just startled you in a parking lot. The kid reached toward him, fingers opening and closing. "Hi," the toddler said, then clearer, "Hi." Hank's entire world tilted sideways. "Is he—" He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't ask the question that was tearing through his chest like a wildfire. Skylar's jaw tightened. She bounced the kid slightly, an automatic gesture, soothing. "We need to go." "Wait." But she was already turning, walking back the way she'd come, her pace measured but quick, not quite running. The kid looked back over her shoulder, waving with pudgy fingers. Hank stood frozen in the sand, watching them disappear down the beach toward the resort. His camera dangled from his neck, forgotten. The sunset was still happening behind him, all that perfect light spilling across the water, but he couldn't see any of it. All he could see was blue eyes and blonde hair, and the shape of his own face staring back at him from a stranger's arms. The hotel bar was doing steady business by the time Hank made it back inside. Tourists in resort wear, honeymooners pretending the rest of the world didn't exist, a guy in a polo shirt arguing too loudly about golf. The AC was cranked too high, that recycled air that smelled like nothing and made his skin feel tight. He sat at the far end away from the crowd. The bartender, Jake, according to his name tag, came over immediately. "Old-fashioned. Whiskey, neat. Whatever's good." Jake raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. 30 seconds later, Hank had a tumbler of amber liquid in front of him. 3 fingers. No ice. He drank half in one swallow. It burned. Good. His phone sat on the bar, screen down. It had buzzed 4 times during his walk back. Probably his assistant. Probably something important. Probably nothing that mattered at all compared to what had just happened on the beach. 2 years. The math was simple. Brutal. If the kid was around 2, then Skylar had been pregnant when she left. When she'd packed her bags and walked out of his apartment in Lincoln Park at 3 in the morning, while he pretended to sleep, listening to her cry in the hallway. He hadn't stopped her, hadn't followed, had let the door click shut and told himself it was for the best. She deserves better, he'd thought. She needs someone who can give her what I can't. He finished the whiskey, signaled for another. Skylar had tried. That was the worst part. The part that was eating him alive now as he sat in this soulless hotel bar, surrounded by happy people who didn't know what it felt like to lose everything while gaining the world. She'd tried, for months, tried to make him talk, tried to make him feel, tried to convince him that success and money and validation from people who didn't know him didn't have to come at the cost of his humanity. She'd stood in his kitchen one night. He could still see it, clear as the sunset he'd just witnessed. In one of his t-shirts, her hair wet from the shower, mascara smudged under her eyes from crying earlier, and she'd said, "You're disappearing, Hank, right in front of me, and I don't know how to pull you back." He'd told her she was being dramatic, that he was fine, that the company was at a critical stage, and once the Series C closed, once they signed the government contract, once the IPO happened, then he'd slow down. Then they'd talk. Then he'd be present. Then. She'd left 3 weeks later. The second whiskey appeared. Hank didn't remember ordering it. Jake was watching him with that careful expression bartenders got when they were trying to decide if you were going to be a problem. "Rough day?" Jake asked. "Something like that." "Woman trouble?" Hank almost laughed. "Is there any other kind?" "Fair point." Jake wiped down the bar, even though it was already clean. "You here alone?" "Yeah." "Vacation?" "Supposed to be." Jake nodded like this made perfect sense. Maybe it did. Maybe every person who sat alone at a hotel bar nursing expensive whiskey was running from the same basic thing, themselves. Hank's phone buzzed again. This time he picked it up, glanced at the screen. His assistant, Sarah. 3 missed calls, 2 texts, 1 email flagged urgent. He put the phone back down. Cypher Core could burn to the ground for all he cared right now. The board could revolt. The stock could crash. None of it mattered. None of it had ever mattered. The kid's face floated in his memory. Round cheeks, curious eyes, that unself-conscious smile. The way he'd waved, like Hank was just another person, not a name on a building or a net worth in a magazine. His son. Maybe. Probably. The resemblance was too strong to be coincidence. And the timeline. The timeline made sense in a way that was systematically destroying every illusion he'd built about his life for the past 2 years. Skylar had left pregnant. She'd tried to reach him. He was sure of it now, the memory surfacing like something dredged from deep water. There'd been calls, emails, messages through mutual friends. He'd ignored all of it, told himself it was clean break protocol, told Sarah to filter her out. And she'd what? Decided to do it alone? To raise his child without him because he'd been too damaged, too unavailable, too completely fucked up to be worth the effort? He couldn't blame her. That was the part that made him want to put his fist through the bar. He couldn't even blame her. She'd made the rational choice, the safe choice. Protected her kid, their kid, from a father who didn't know how to be human, let alone a parent. The bar had gotten louder. Someone's laughter cut through the ambient noise, shrill and genuine. Hank's head was starting to pound, the whiskey mixing with exhaustion and emotional overload to create something toxic behind his eyes. He should sleep, go to his suite, take a pill, check out of consciousness for 8 hours. He should call his lawyer. He should leave Maui tomorrow morning and pretend this never happened. He did none of those things. Instead, he paid his tab, $50 for 2 drinks because Paradise wasn't cheap, and walked out of the bar. The resort at night was different than during the day. Softer. The pools lit from below, water glowing turquoise and unreal. Couples walking hand in hand, kids running around with glow sticks, supervised by parents who looked tired but content. This was the world he'd bought his way into, the world of people who took vacations, who had families, who understood how to exist in their own lives. He didn't belong here. He'd never belonged anywhere. Hank found himself walking toward the family wing of the resort without deciding to. His feet just moved autopilot, following some instinct he didn't know he had. The hallways were quieter here, carpeted, decorated with bright murals of sea turtles and dolphins. A kid's sandal sat abandoned by a door. He stopped at the end of the corridor, leaned against the wall. This was insane. He was acting like a stalker, like someone who'd completely lost his grip on appropriate behavior. But he couldn't make himself leave. Somewhere in this building, maybe on this floor, maybe just a few doors away, was his son. Learning to talk, learning to walk, learning that the world was a place where people smiled at you and caught you when you fell. Learning all of this without him. A door opened behind him. Hank turned, heart in his throat. An elderly couple emerged, arguing cheerfully about whether they'd remembered to lock the rental car. They glanced at him, nodded politely, kept walking. He was alone in the hallway, alone like he'd always been, like he'd apparently decided he deserved to be. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. He pulled it out, ready to turn it off completely. But the text wasn't from Sarah. It was from a Chicago number he hadn't deleted, but hadn't called in 2 years. Skylar, Room 347, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. We need to talk. Hank stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then he walked back to his suite, lay down fully clothed on the bed he never slept in, and watched the ceiling fan turn circles until the sun came up. What would you do if you saw your past walking toward you, and it was holding your future in its arms? The knock came at exactly 8 a.m. Hank had been awake for 3 hours, sitting on the edge of his bed watching the sunrise through floor-to-ceiling windows that cost more per night than most people made in a week. He'd showered, shaved, changed his shirt twice before settling on a plain grey t-shirt that didn't look like he was trying too hard. His hands had been shaking when he brushed his teeth. Now they were steady. Numb, maybe. The kind of calm that came from pure exhaustion. He opened the door. Skylar stood in the hallway wearing cut-off denim shorts and a white tank top, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup. Sandals that had seen better days. She looked like she'd just rolled out of bed, except for her eyes, red-rimmed, like she'd spent the night crying or staring at the ceiling. Probably both. She didn't have the kid with her. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Neither of them moved. The hallway hummed with recycled air, too cold, artificial. Somewhere down the hall, a room service cart rattled past. "Can I come in?" Her voice was careful, polite, the way you'd talk to a stranger. Hank stepped back. She walked past him, and he caught the scent of her shampoo. Coconut, the cheap kind from drugstores, the same one she'd used 2 years ago because she said the expensive stuff made her hair feel like plastic. Some things hadn't changed. His suite was exactly what you'd expect. Immaculate, impersonal. A hotel room pretending to be a home. Skylar stood near the window, arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the water like she was gathering courage from the horizon. Hank closed the door. The click echoed. "You want coffee?" He gestured toward the Nespresso machine on the counter, still in its packaging. "I haven't actually. I don't want coffee." She turned to face him. "I want to get this over with." Fair enough. They stood there 10 feet apart, the space between them loaded with 2 years of silence and questions that had calcified into something sharp. "His name is Noah," Skylar said finally. "He's 23 months old. He likes trucks and anything that makes noise. He's allergic to strawberries. He can count to 10, but he skips 7 every time." Her voice wavered on the last word. She steadied it. "And yes, he's yours." The room tilted. Hank had known, of course he'd known, the math was simple, the resemblance undeniable, but hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way that punched through whatever protective numbness he'd built overnight. "Why didn't you tell me?" The question came out quieter than he meant it to. Skylar's laugh was harsh, humorless. "Are you serious right now?" "I'm asking—" "I tried." Her hands clenched into fists. "I tried for 3 months, Hank. 3 months of emails and phone calls and messages through Julia, and that one time I actually showed up at your office and your assistant, Sarah, right? She looked at me like I was some crazy stalker and said you were in a meeting with investors and couldn't be disturbed." The memory surfaced. He'd been in that meeting. Series C closing, 20 million on the table. Sarah had texted him, "Skylar's here. Want me to handle it?" He'd typed back, "Please. I didn't know you were pregnant." Would it have mattered? The question hung between them like smoke. "Yes," he said. "It would have—" "Bullshit." She took a step toward him, then stopped herself. "You didn't even know how to be present for me, Hank. For us. What were you going to do with a baby? I would have figured it out. Like you figured out how to answer my calls. Like you figured out how to show up for dinner more than twice a month. Like you figured out how to look at me without seeing an obligation." Each word landed like a physical blow, because she was right. She was completely, devastatingly right. The silence stretched out. Outside, a bird landed on the balcony railing, some tropical thing with bright feathers, absurdly cheerful. It pecked at something invisible, then flew away. "Where is he now?" Hank asked. "With my mom. She flew in yesterday from L.A. Skylar's shoulders dropped slightly. "She's staying with him while we do this." So she lived in Los Angeles. That was new information, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe she'd told him during one of those final arguments, and he hadn't been listening. Wouldn't be the first time. "Do what exactly?" I don't know. Her voice got smaller. Figure out what happens next, I guess. Hank moved to the couch, sat down before his legs could give out. The leather was cold against his skin, sticky in the humidity. Skylar stayed by the window, backlit by morning sun, her edges blurred and golden. Tell me about him, Hank said. Please. She hesitated. Then, slowly, she walked over and sat in the chair across from him. Not close. But not hiding either. He wakes up at 6 every morning, like clockwork. Doesn't matter where we are or what time he went to bed. A small smile ghosted across her face. First thing he does is look for his stuffed elephant. This ratty grey thing he's had since he was 4 months old. Won't sleep without it. Hank listened, tried to picture it, failed. He's obsessed with water. Skylar continued. Baths, pools, the ocean, anything. Yesterday on the beach he kept trying to grab the waves, thought it was hilarious when they knocked him down. Her smile faded. That's when I saw you. I turned around, and there you were, just standing there with that camera, looking like she stopped, looking lost, and I am lost. The admission surprised both of them. Skylar studied him for a long moment. You look different. So do you. Yeah, well, single parenthood ages you. It wasn't a joke. You look thinner, tired. Haven't been sleeping much. Since when? Since you left. Her jaw tightened. Don't do that. Do what? Make this about us, about what we were. That's dead, Hank. It died a long time ago. Did it? Yes. But her voice wavered. It had to. Morning light slanted through the windows now, warming the artificial coldness of the suite. Down at the pool, kids were already shrieking, the sound carrying faintly through the glass. I want to meet him, Hank said. Properly, not just an accident on the beach. Skylar's posture went rigid. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because, she stood up, started pacing. Because you don't get to just walk in after 2 years and play dad. That's not how this works. Then tell me how it works. I don't know. The words exploded out of her. I don't know, okay? I've spent the last 23 months doing this alone, figuring it out as I go, making it up, making mistakes, trying not to completely fuck up this tiny person who depends on me for everything. And it's been, her voice broke. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done. And the best thing. And I did it without you. She was crying now, angry tears that she swiped away with the back of her hand. Hank wanted to go to her, didn't. I know, he said quietly. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Skylar. Sorry doesn't change anything. No, it doesn't. She stopped pacing, stood in the middle of his expensive hotel suite with its ocean view and its meaningless luxury, looking small and fierce and absolutely certain. He's happy, she said. Noah. He's a happy kid. He laughs all the time. He's curious about everything. He doesn't know that most kids have fathers. He just knows he has me and my mom in his life, and that's enough for him right now. But it won't always be. No, she admitted. Probably not. So what do we do? Skylar wiped her eyes, took a shaky breath. I need time to think, to figure out if... She stopped, started again. To figure out if you're serious about this, about him, or if you're just having some kind of crisis because your past showed up unexpectedly. I'm serious. You say that now, but what about next week, next month? When you're back in Chicago and the company needs you and there's some big deal that can't wait and Noah is just... inconvenient? The words stung because they were fair, because she knew him, had known him better than anyone. I've changed, Hank said. Have you? He wanted to say yes, wanted to believe it, but the truth was he didn't know. The man who'd driven Skylar away was the same man sitting in this room. Older, maybe. Richer, definitely. But fundamentally the same person who'd chosen work over love, success over connection, safety over risk. Except seeing Noah on that beach had cracked something open inside him. Something he'd thought was sealed off permanently. And now it was leaking everywhere. This desperate, terrifying need to be part of something that mattered more than his net worth, or his company valuation, or what Forbes thought of his latest acquisition. I don't know if I've changed, he said honestly, but I want to try. I want to... He struggled for the words. I want to know him. I want him to know me, even if I'm terrible at it, even if I don't know what I'm doing. Skylar studied him. Her eyes were still wet, exhaustion written in every line of her body. One meeting, she said finally. Tomorrow at the beach, neutral territory. You can meet him properly. See how he is. We'll tell him you're a friend. Nothing more, not yet. Okay. And Hank? She met his eyes. If you're going to do this, if you're going to be in his life, then you're all in. No half measures, no disappearing when things get hard. Because if you hurt him, her voice went hard, if you hurt him, I will make sure you never see him again. I don't care how much money you have or how many lawyers you can afford. I will protect my son, understand? I understand. She nodded, grabbed her purse from where she'd dropped it by the door. 4 o'clock tomorrow. The beach where you saw us yesterday. Don't be late. I won't. She paused with her hand on the door. For what it's worth. I'm glad you're here in Maui. I didn't plan this, seeing you again. I wanted to hate you. She looked back at him. But I don't. I don't know what I feel anymore. Then she was gone. Hank sat alone in his suite, staring at the space where she'd been. The room smelled faintly of coconut and something else, baby powder maybe, clinging to her clothes, evidence of the life she'd built without him. His phone sat on the coffee table, silent for once. No emails, no calls, no emergencies that couldn't wait. For the first time in years, Hank White had something more important to do than work. He just hoped he remembered how to be human enough to do it. Hank arrived at the beach 45 minutes early. He'd spent the previous day in a state of controlled panic, walking the resort grounds, sitting by the pool without seeing it, ordering food he didn't eat. His assistant had called twice. He'd sent both to voicemail. The board wanted to schedule an emergency meeting about the Microsoft acquisition. He'd texted back, handle it. Sarah had responded with 3 question marks. He'd turned his phone off. Now he stood at the edge of the sand, shoes in hand, watching the water. The beach was less crowded at 4. The peak sun worshippers had retreated to their rooms, leaving mostly families with young kids and couples walking hand in hand. A group of teenagers played volleyball near the waterline, their shouts carrying on the breeze. Normal people doing normal things. Hank had no idea how to be normal. He'd changed his shirt twice that morning, settled on navy blue, casual, the kind of thing a regular person would wear. Then he'd stared at himself in the mirror and realized he looked exactly like a billionaire trying to dress down. The shirt probably cost $300. His watch cost more than a car. Everything about him screamed money and distance and a life lived in first-class lounges. He'd taken the watch off, left it in the safe. It didn't help much. At 3:47 he saw them. Skylar walking along the beach with Noah on her hip, a beach bag slung over her shoulder. She wore a yellow sundress today, her hair down, sunglasses pushed up on her head. Noah had on swim trunks with dinosaurs on them, and nothing else. His pale skin already pink from sun despite what must have been multiple applications of sunscreen. The toddler was pointing at seagulls, saying something animated. Skylar was nodding, smiling, looking like she'd done this 1,000 times, which she had, without him. Hank's stomach dropped. They spotted him. Noah waved immediately, no hesitation. Hi! Hey, buddy! The words felt foreign in his mouth. Skylar set Noah down in the sand. The toddler immediately squatted, grabbed a handful of it, let it run through his fingers like he'd discovered something miraculous. Maybe he had. To a 2-year-old, everything was new. Noah, this is Hank, Skylar said carefully. He's a friend of Mommy's, from a long time ago. Noah looked up, studied Hank with those impossible blue eyes, a mirror of his own, genetics screaming across the space between them. You big, Noah announced. Skylar bit back a smile. Yeah, he is pretty tall. I'm not that tall. Hank crouched down, bringing himself closer to Noah's level. His knees protested. When had he gotten old? But he ignored it. You're just the perfect size. Noah seemed to consider this. Then he held out his sandy hand. Sand. I see that. That's good sand. Good sand, Noah repeated, delighted. He threw the handful in the air. Most of it ended up in his own hair. He laughed like it was the funniest thing that had ever happened. Skylar sighed. "And that's why we bathe 3 times a day." But she was smiling. She pulled a bucket and shovel from her bag, a few plastic molds shaped like sea creatures. "You want to build a castle?" "Castle?" Noah grabbed the bucket, dumped it upside down. Nothing happened. He looked betrayed. "You got to fill it first, bud." Skylar showed him, scooping wet sand from the waterline. Noah immediately tried to help, his shovel technique more enthusiasm than accuracy. Hank watched them, feeling useless. He didn't know how to play. Didn't know the rules of sandcastles or what made a 2-year-old laugh. Everything about this felt like a test he hadn't studied for. "You just gonna stand there?" Skylar asked, not looking at him. "I don't know what to do." "Sit, help, pretend you're human for 5 minutes." The barb landed, but not unkindly. Hank sat. The sand was warm and gritty and immediately uncomfortable. Noah scooted closer, handed him a mold shaped like a starfish. "You do it," Noah commanded. "Okay." Hank pressed the mold into the sand, lifted it carefully. A reasonably starfish-shaped lump remained. "How's that?" Noah's eyes went wide. "Again." So Hank made another one, and another. Noah clapped each time like Hank had performed magic. The kid's joy was so uncomplicated, so pure, that something in Hank's chest started to unfold, not crack or break, but open. Like a door he'd kept locked was finally being tested. They built a castle, or what Noah decided was a castle, mostly just a pile of sand with shells stuck in it at random intervals. Skylar added turrets. Hank dug a moat that kept collapsing. Noah provided commentary, his vocabulary limited but his opinions strong. "More water. Too much water. No, 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 there." At some point, a wave came in bigger than the others, destroying half their construction. Noah's face crumpled. Hank braced for tears. Instead, the kid laughed. "Uh-oh, water got it." "Yep, the ocean wins again," Skylar said. "Should we rebuild?" "Rebuild?" Noah was already scooping sand with renewed determination. They stayed on that beach for 2 hours. Hank lost track of time completely. No meetings to get to, no emails to answer. Nothing but the repetitive, strangely meditative work of playing with a toddler who thought he hung the moon just for making sand starfish. Noah eventually got tired, his movements getting slower, his words slurring together. He climbed into Skylar's lap without asking, his sandy body leaving grit all over her dress. She didn't seem to care, just wrapped her arms around him and started humming something soft. Hank recognized the melody. She used to hum it in the mornings, making coffee in his kitchen, thinking he was still asleep. He'd never told her he was listening. "He's gonna crash soon," Skylar said quietly. "He didn't nap today, too excited about the beach." "Excited?" Hank asked. "Or nervous?" "Both, maybe." She looked at him over Noah's head. "He picks up on things, kids do. He could tell I was tense this morning." "I'm sorry. Stop apologizing." But her voice was gentle. "You're doing better than I expected." "What did you expect? Honestly, I thought you'd last 20 minutes before making excuses about work." The assessment stung because it was probably accurate. The Hank from 2 years ago would have done exactly that. Hell, the Hank from last week might have. But something had shifted. Sitting here in the sand with his son falling asleep in Skylar's arms, Hank couldn't remember why he'd thought any of it mattered. The deals, the money, the validation from strangers who'd never know his middle name or what kept him up at night. This mattered. This was real. "Can I—" He stopped. "Can I see him again? Tomorrow?" Skylar was quiet for a long time. The sun had started its descent, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. Down the beach, the volleyball game was breaking up, players trudging back toward the resort. "Yeah," she said finally. "Breakfast. At the restaurant by the main pool. 8:30. He likes pancakes." "Okay." "Hank?" She met his eyes. "Thank you for today, for trying." "I should be thanking you for letting me," his voice caught. "For giving me this." She nodded. Noah stirred in her arms, making a soft sound of protest at the movement. "I should get him back. Bath time, dinner, the whole routine." They stood. Hank instinctively reached to help her up, his hand under her elbow. The touch was brief, familiar, charged with everything they weren't saying. She pulled away, not unkindly. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow. He watched them walk away, Noah's head on Skylar's shoulder, his elephant clutched in one fist. They looked complete, like a unit that didn't need anyone else. Hank stood alone on the beach as the light faded, staring at the castle they'd built. It was already disappearing, each wave taking a little more erosion in real time. By morning it would be gone entirely, like it had never existed. His phone was still off in his pocket. The world was still turning without him. And for the first time in his adult life, Hank White didn't care. Breakfast was chaos. Noah apparently didn't just like pancakes, he was passionate about them. He'd eaten most of one, smeared syrup across the table, dropped his fork twice, and was now attempting to feed pieces of pancake to a gecko that had wandered onto the patio. "Noah, no," Skylar said for the third time. "The gecko doesn't want pancake. He hungry. He eats bugs, bud, not people food." Noah looked devastated by this information. The gecko, unbothered, skittered away into the landscaping. Hank was on his second coffee, trying not to laugh. Skylar caught his expression and shook her head. "You think this is funny now. Wait until you're covered in syrup. I've been to boardroom negotiations less chaotic than this. Welcome to parenting." She rescued Noah's cup before he could knock it over. "It's all sticky fingers and questionable life choices." Noah grabbed his shovel. He'd insisted on bringing it to breakfast, non-negotiable, and started banging it on the table. A couple at the next table glanced over, annoyed. Skylar caught the shovel mid-swing. Inside voice, remember, "But I'm excited." Noah's volume didn't change. "Excited about what?" "Beach again." Skylar's face softened. "Maybe later, okay, after rest time." "No rest time." "Yes, rest time, or you'll be cranky." "Not cranky." But his eyes were already heavy, the post-pancake crash imminent. Skylar knew the signs. She started packing up. Sippy cup, wipes, the shovel that was apparently a permanent fixture now. "You got plans today?" she asked Hank, casual but not quite. "Nothing important." She hesitated. "My mom wants to do the road to Hana. It's supposed to be beautiful, but it's an all-day thing, and Noah gets carsick on windy roads, so I was going to skip it. But if—" She stopped. "If you wanted to hang out with him this afternoon, while he naps and after, I could actually go, for a few hours, give her the experience she came here for." Hank's pulse kicked up. "You'd trust me with him? Alone?" "I wouldn't be leaving you alone with him. I'd be leaving him alone with you. There's a difference." She met his eyes. "He seems comfortable with you. And despite everything, She looked away. "I trust you won't let anything happen to him. I won't, I promise. He goes down at 1, sleeps for 2 hours usually. You can hang out in our room, it's bigger than yours actually. We got the family suite. There's a pull-out couch, books, his entire toy collection, which is excessive." "Okay. He'll probably wake up cranky. He always does. Give him his elephant and some water and he'll reset. Then you can take him to the tide pools by the South Beach. He loves those, just—" Her voice caught. "Just watch him around the water. He's fearless and that scares the hell out of me." "I'll watch him." She nodded, blinking fast. "Room 347. I'll leave the door unlocked. Come by at 12:30. That gives me time to get him down and give you the full rundown." Room 347 was nothing like Hank's suite. It was lived in. Clothes draped over chairs, toys scattered across the floor, an open suitcase on the bed with what looked like every item of clothing Skylar owned spilling out. The bathroom door was ajar, revealing a counter covered in baby products, her makeup bag, medications. This was life. Messy, real, unfiltered. Noah was already asleep in the bedroom, door cracked, a white noise machine humming. Skylar's mom, Linda, she'd introduced herself, firm handshake and assessing eyes, was gathering her purse. "You must be Hank." Linda's tone was neutral, not hostile but not warm. "Yes, Mom. My daughter says you're good with Noah." "I'm trying." She studied him for a long moment. "Skylar doesn't let just anyone near him. The fact that you're here means something. Don't make her regret it." "I won't." Linda nodded. "Emergency numbers are on the fridge. Skylar's phone is always on. He's allergic to strawberries, she probably told you already. If he seems off in any way, call her. Don't try to be a hero." "I understand." She left. Then it was just Hank and Skylar in the cluttered room, the silence loaded. "He should sleep until 3, Skylar said, all business. "If he wakes up early, don't panic. Just talk to him quiet, give him his elephant. His favorite book is the one about trucks." She pointed to a board book on the nightstand. "He'll want you to read it 600 times. "Got it. Snacks are in the mini fridge. Nothing with strawberries. If you're not sure, don't give it to him. His EpiPen is in my purse, but you shouldn't need—" She stopped herself. "You won't need it. Just be careful." "Skylar." She looked at him and he saw the fear there. Not of him, exactly, of letting go, of trusting someone with the most precious thing in her world. "He'll be okay," Hank said quietly. "I promise." She nodded, grabbed her bag, hesitated at the door. "Thank you for this, for—" Her voice cracked, "for showing up." Then she was gone, and Hank was alone in a hotel room with his sleeping son in the next room, and absolutely no idea what he was doing. He sat on the couch, waited. The white noise machine hummed. Outside, people laughed at the pool. At 2:47, Noah started crying. Hank moved quietly into the bedroom. Noah was sitting up in the travel crib, tears streaming down his face, clutching his elephant like a lifeline. "Hey, buddy." Hank kept his voice soft. "You're okay, just waking up, huh?" Noah's lip trembled. "Mama. Mama went on an adventure, but she's coming back. You're stuck with me for a bit." "Stuck? That means we get to hang out, just us, that okay?" Noah considered this. His crying had stopped, but he still looked uncertain. Hank held out his arms, not sure if the kid would come. Noah reached up. The weight of him was everything and nothing, solid, warm, trusting in a way that made Hank's breath catch. He smelled like baby shampoo and sunscreen and something sweet that might have been syrup from breakfast. "Want some water?" Hank asked. Noah nodded against his shoulder. They went to the mini-fridge together. Hank fumbled with the sippy cup one-handed, spilled water on his shirt, didn't care. Noah drank half of it, handed it back, seemed to reset exactly like Skylar had said. "Beach?" Noah asked hopefully. "Tide pools. Your mom said you like those." Tide pools. The enthusiasm was back, just like that. No grudge, no lingering sadness. Kids were remarkable that way. They gathered supplies, towels, sunscreen, Noah's shovel because of course. Hank slathered SPF 50 on every exposed inch of Noah's skin, while the kids squirmed and protested. Finally, they were ready. "Hold my hand in the hallway, okay?" Hank said. Noah's small hand slipped into his. The trust in that gesture nearly undid him. They walked through the resort together, past families and couples and people who belonged here. Someone did a double take, recognition flickering across their face before Hank looked away. He wasn't Hank White, CEO, right now. He was just a guy with his kid, heading to the beach. It was the best he'd felt in years. Can you learn to be someone you were never taught to be? Or do some mistakes run too deep to fix? The tide pools were perfect, shallow water trapped between volcanic rocks, filled with tiny fish and sea urchins, and creatures Noah didn't have names for but wanted to touch anyway. Hank kept one hand on the back of the kids' swim trunks, insurance against enthusiasm overriding caution. "Gentle," Hank reminded him for the 10th time. "We look, but we don't grab." Noah's finger hovered over a starfish clinging to a rock. "Why?" "Because it's their home. We're just visiting." "Oh." Noah pulled his hand back, satisfied with this explanation. "Like hotel." Exactly like a hotel. They'd been there for almost an hour. Noah's attention span was longer than Hank expected. He'd crouch next to a pool, study it intensely, then move to the next one and start over. The shovel had been abandoned after 5 minutes in favor of his hands, which were now wrinkled and sandy and constantly trying to pick up things he shouldn't. A family set up nearby, parents and 3 kids ranging from maybe 4 to 8. The oldest, a girl with braids and a rash guard, immediately started organizing her siblings into some kind of elaborate game involving buckets and a ranking system for shells. Noah watched them with naked longing. "You want to go play?" Hank asked. Noah shook his head, suddenly shy. But his eyes stayed on the other kids. The girl noticed. She walked over, bold and unconcerned. "Hi, I'm Emma." You want to help find shells? Noah looked up at Hank, asking permission maybe, or checking if this was allowed. Go ahead, Hank said. I'll be right here. Noah toddled over, still cautious. Emma handed him a bucket without preamble and started explaining the rules. Big shells worth 5 points, little shells worth 2, broken ones don't count. Noah nodded seriously, like she was revealing state secrets. The parents, mid-30s, matching resort bracelets, that comfortable way couples moved when they'd been together forever, glanced over at Hank. The dad raised a hand in greeting. Hank waved back. He yours? The mum called over. Yeah. The word felt strange, true but new. Just turned 2. Ours are 4, 6, and 8. It doesn't get easier, just louder. But she was smiling. I'm Jennifer. That's Mark. Hank. They fell into the easy small talk of parents in public spaces. Where are you from? How long are you here? Has your kid tried the pancakes yet? Surface-level stuff, the kind Hank normally hated but found himself grateful for now. Normal conversation, normal people doing normal things. Noah brought him a shell, bright orange, mostly intact. 5 points. That's a good one, Hank agreed. Your bucket's getting full. More shells. Noah ran back to his new friends. Jennifer laughed. Emma's a shell tyrant. She's very serious about the point system. Noah seems to be keeping up. First kid, she asked. The question landed sideways. Was Noah his first kid? Technically, yes. Practically. He'd missed the first 23 months, so did that count? Yeah, Hank said finally. First and only. Cherish this age, Mark said, before they learned to talk back. They chatted for another 20 minutes while the kids played. Hank felt himself relaxing, the constant anxiety that had lived in his chest since the beach encounter easing slightly. This was doable. This was... His phone rang. He'd turned it back on that morning, a concession to reality. Now he regretted it. The screen showed Sarah's name. He let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Sorry, Hank said to Jennifer and Mark. Work thing, 1 second. He walked a few feet away, Noah still visible in his peripheral vision, answered. Hank, thank God. Sarah's voice was tight. Where have you been? The board is losing their minds. Microsoft wants an answer by Monday or they're walking. Chen from legal needs your signature on the acquisition docs. And there's a reporter from TechCrunch asking questions about your personal life. The last part made his blood go cold. What kind of questions? Something about you being spotted in Maui with a woman and a child. They're asking if you have a secret family. Hank, is there something I should know? He watched Noah crouch next to Emma, examining a hermit crab. The kid's whole face was alight with wonder. Tell them no comment, Hank said. That's not going to make this go away. If there's a story here, we need to get ahead of it. Control the narrative. There's no narrative to control. Hank, I'm serious, Sarah. Tell them to mind their own business, and tell the board I'll deal with Microsoft when I'm back. If they can't wait a week, then we don't need them. Silence on the other end. Then, a week? You're staying in Maui for another week? Maybe longer. What about the company? The company will survive without me for a few days. Will it? Her voice got sharper. Because right now you've got 1,200 employees who depend on your leadership, investors who trust your vision, and competitors who'd love nothing more than to see CipherCore stumble. You don't get to just disappear, Hank. That's not how this works. She was right. He knew she was right. The responsible thing would be to book a flight back to Chicago tonight. Handle the Microsoft deal. Put out whatever fire was brewing with the press. Be the CEO everyone expected him to be. But Noah was laughing at something Emma said, his voice carrying across the rocks, bright and unguarded. And Hank realized with sudden clarity that he'd heard that laugh maybe 3 times total, 3 times in 2 days. He'd missed hundreds, thousands of moments just like this. First words, first steps, first everything. He wasn't missing anymore. The company survived before I was CEO, Hank said quietly. It'll survive if I take a week off. And if it doesn't? Then I guess I wasn't as essential as I thought. He hung up. powered his phone down completely this time, shoved it deep in his pocket. When he turned back, Noah was running toward him, bucket in hand, face flushed with excitement. "Look, 10 shells. Emma says that's good." "That's great, buddy." Hank crouched down to admire the collection. "You worked hard." "Yeah." Noah's grin revealed gaps where baby teeth hadn't filled in yet. There was so much Hank didn't know, so much he needed to learn. The other family was packing up, calling their kids. Emma waved goodbye like she and Noah were old friends. Noah waved back, then turned to Hank. "Home now?" "Yeah, we should probably get back. Your mom will be done with her drive soon." They gathered their things, towels, shovel, the bucket of shells Noah insisted on keeping. Walking back through the resort, Noah's hand found Hank's again without prompting. Just reached up and grabbed on, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Something in Hank's chest shifted, not breaking or cracking, just rearranging itself around this new reality. Skylar was already back when they got to the room, sitting on the couch with her laptop, hair wind-blown, skin flushed from sun. She looked up when they walked in, relief flooding her face. "Hey, how was it?" "Tide pools," Noah announced, "and Emma and shells." "That sounds amazing. Did you say thank you to Hank?" Noah looked up at Hank, suddenly serious. "Thank you." "You're welcome, buddy." Skylar's mom appeared from the bedroom. "We should probably head to dinner. I saw a place down by the marina." "Actually," Skylar said, "I was thinking maybe Hank could join us if he wants, no pressure." Linda's eyebrows rose. Hank could see her doing the calculation. This was moving fast, maybe too fast. But she didn't object. "I'd like that," Hank said. "Great. Give us 20 minutes to get cleaned up." Noah needed a full outfit change. The kid was somehow sandy from head to toe, despite Hank's best efforts. Skylar took him into the bathroom, while Hank waited in the living area with Linda. The silence was heavy. "My daughter is more forgiving than I am," Linda said finally. "I want you to know that. I understand. I don't think you do." She set down her phone, met his eyes. "I was there, when she was pregnant and scared and trying to reach you. I watched her cry herself to sleep because the man she loved had erased her from his life. I held her hand during labor when she was alone because you were too busy or too important or too whatever to pick up a goddamn phone." Each word was a knife. Hank took it. "You seem like you're trying now," Linda continued. "And that's good. Noah deserves a father. But effort for a few days doesn't erase 2 years of absence. You want to be in their lives? Prove it. Not with money or grand gestures, with showing up, every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." "I will," Hank said. "I promise. Promises are easy. Ask any divorced couple." She stood. "But I'm willing to give you a chance, for Noah's sake. Don't waste it." Skylar emerged with Noah, freshly changed, his hair wet and combed. Ready. They went to dinner, a seafood place overlooking the water, casual enough that Noah's occasional outbursts didn't draw stares. He was tired from the afternoon, getting cranky, but Skylar navigated it with practiced ease. Distraction, redirection, the occasional firm boundary delivered in a voice that meant business. Hank watched her work. The patience, the consistency, the way she knew exactly when to push and when to let it go. This was expertise built over thousands of hours he hadn't been there for. Noah fell asleep before dessert, face down on the table next to his half-eaten chicken fingers. Skylar didn't even blink, just shifted him to her lap like she'd done it 1,000 times. "So," Linda said, looking at Hank, "what's the plan? You stay in Maui forever? Skylar and Noah move to Chicago? You do the bi-coastal thing?" "Mom, it's a fair question." Linda wasn't hostile, just direct. "You can't build a relationship on vacation time." "I know," Hank said. "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, this is still the easy part. It's all sunshine and beach days. What happens when you go back to real life? When work gets busy and Noah gets sick and Skylar needs you at 3 in the morning?" "Mom, stop." Skylar's voice was quiet but firm. "We're figuring it out." "Are you?" Linda looked between them. "Because I'm not seeing a lot of figuring. I'm seeing 2 people avoiding the hard conversations." She wasn't wrong. The table went quiet. Around them, families laughed and clinked glasses and lived their lives. Normal people with normal problems, not this tangled mess of past mistakes and present complications. I want to be in his life, Hank said finally. In both their lives, however that looks. Chicago's a long way from Los Angeles, Linda said. The geography hung there. 4-hour flight, different time zones, different worlds. I can travel, Hank said. Work remote sometimes. We can make it work. Can you? Linda's tone was skeptical. Because Skylar told me about your schedule. 18-hour days. Flying to New York twice a month. The company that apparently can't function without you. That can change. Can it, though? Hank looked at Skylar. She was stroking Noah's hair, her eyes fixed on her son's sleeping face, not offering backup, not contradicting her mother either. Yes, Hank said, more force behind it now. It can change. It has to. Why? Linda leaned forward. What's different this time? 2 years ago, the company was everything. What changed? I saw my son. The words came out raw, unfiltered. I saw him on that beach and He stopped, started over. I've spent my whole life building something I thought mattered. Company, reputation, legacy. And none of it means anything if I miss this. If I miss him growing up, I can't... His voice cracked. I can't lose this before I even have it. The silence that followed was different, softer. Linda nodded slowly. Okay. Okay. That's the right answer. She stood, gathered her purse. I'm going to take a walk. Give you two some space to talk about the things you've been avoiding. She looked at Skylar. Real talk, not more dancing around. Then she was gone. Skylar finally met his eyes. Noah shifted in her sleep, making a soft sound. The restaurant was starting to empty, the dinner rush winding down. She's right, Skylar said quietly. We can't keep pretending this is sustainable. I know. So what do we do? Hank had no answer. For the first time in his career, he'd hit a problem that couldn't be solved with money, or strategy, or sheer force of will. This required something he'd never been good at. It required him to choose what mattered more. How do you choose between the life you built and the life you should have had? They walked back to Skylar's room in silence, Noah still asleep against her shoulder. The resort at night was all soft lighting and the smell of plumeria, romantic couples stealing kisses by the koi pond, the distant thump of music from the beach bar. Everything designed to make you forget that real life existed beyond this manufactured paradise. But real life was waiting. Skylar's mom had texted that she was having a drink at the lobby bar, giving them space. The room felt different when they entered. Quieter, more intimate. Skylar laid Noah in his travel crib without waking him, a skill she'd perfected through necessity. She pulled the door mostly closed, leaving just a crack. Then she turned to face Hank. We can't keep doing this, she said. Doing what? Playing house. Pretending like a few good days erases everything. She sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking exhausted. I want to believe you, Hank. I want to believe this is real and permanent, and you're actually going to show up, but you don't. I don't know. She pulled her hair out of its ponytail, the waves falling messy around her shoulders. 2 years ago, you couldn't even show up for me, for us. And I wasn't asking for much, just dinner occasionally, a conversation that lasted more than 10 minutes, some sign that I mattered more than your board meetings. Hank leaned against the wall, keeping distance between them. Through the window he could see the ocean, dark and infinite under a sliver of moon. I was scared, he said. Of what? Of not being enough, of failing at something that mattered. He looked at her. My parents, they weren't good at the whole love thing. They had a marriage that looked perfect on paper. Country club, charity galas, the right circles, and behind closed doors, they were strangers who happened to share a house. Skylar's expression softened slightly. My dad measured everything in ROI. Hank continued. Return on investment, even relationships, even me. He'd ask what I accomplished that week, what grades I got, what colleges were recruiting me. Never asked how I felt or what I wanted. He swallowed hard. And my mom just let it happen. She was there physically but emotionally. Gone, checked out, playing her role. That's not an excuse. I know it's not. I'm just explaining. He pushed off the wall, moved to the window. When you and I got serious, when it started feeling real, I panicked. Because I didn't know how to do it differently than them, I thought maybe if I just focused on work, built something successful, then I'd be worthy of—" He stopped. "Of you, of a family, of something real." "That's backwards," Skylar said quietly. "I don't earn love through achievement. That's not how it works. I know that now. Do you?" She stood. "Because here's what I see. You're making promises about changing, about being present. But you're still the same person, Hank. Same patterns, same fears. What happens when we go back to real life and Noah gets sick at 2 a.m. and you have a meeting in 6 hours? What happens when I need you and your company needs you and you have to choose? I'll choose you. Will you?" Her voice wavered. "Because 2 years ago you chose wrong. Every single time." The words hung between them, sharp and true. Hank wanted to argue, wanted to promise things would be different. But Linda was right. Promises were easy. Proof was what mattered. "I don't know how to prove it to you," he admitted. "Not in a week, not in a month. This is going to take time. Noah doesn't have time to wait for you to figure yourself out." She wrapped her arms around herself. "He's growing up right now, every day, every moment. You don't get those back." "I know. So what's the actual plan?" Her tone shifted, less emotional, more practical. The same voice she probably used when making doctor's appointments and budgeting groceries. "You live in Chicago, we live in LA. That's a 4-hour flight. Are you going to fly out every weekend, every other weekend, once a month?" Hank hadn't thought that far, hadn't let himself think that far, because once you started doing the math, the impossibility of the situation became obvious. "I could move," he said. Skylar's eyes widened. "To LA? Why not? Cyphercore has an office in Santa Monica. I could run things from there, or work remote most days. You're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. You can't just move across the country. I can do whatever I want. That's the point of being CEO. Is it?" She shook her head. "Because from what you've told me, it sounds like you're more trapped than anyone. Trapped by expectations, by the board, by this identity you've built." She wasn't wrong. "Then I'll quit," Hank said. The words surprised both of them. "What?" "I'll step down. Let the board find someone else. Someone who wants to live in conference rooms and answer to investors." He felt something loosen in his chest as he said it, a knot he'd been carrying for years. "I've got enough money to never work again. More than enough. I could—" He paused, the idea taking shape as he spoke. "I could be a dad, actually be present, help you, be the parent I never had." Skylar stared at him. "You're not serious." "Why not?" "Because that company is your life. You built it from nothing. You've given everything to it." "And what did it give me back?" His voice got harder. "A corner office? A Forbes profile? The privilege of working 80-hour weeks while life passed me by?" He moved closer. "I missed 23 months of my son's life because I thought that mattered more. I'm not missing the rest." "Hank." "I mean it, Skylar. I'll quit. I'll move to LA. He stopped, suddenly aware of how desperate he sounded. "I'll do whatever it takes." She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. "You can't make decisions like that in a week. That's insane." "Why?" "Because what if you regret it? What if you resent us for making you give up everything you worked for?" "I won't. You don't know that." She wiped her eyes roughly. People make grand gestures all the time, promise to change everything. And then 6 months later, when the novelty wears off and real life is hard and boring and repetitive, they realize they made a mistake. "This isn't a grand gesture." "Yes, it is!" Her voice rose, then immediately dropped, mindful of Noah sleeping in the next room. "Yes, it is," she repeated, quieter. "You're talking about blowing up your entire life based on 4 days with your son, 4 good days. You don't know what parenting actually is yet. The sleepless nights, the tantrums, the endless repetition of the same stupid songs and books, the way it grinds you down until you're not even sure who you are anymore. Then teach me." He closed the distance between them. "Show me. Let me learn. I'm not asking to have all the answers right now. I'm just asking for a chance to try." She looked up at him, and for the first time since the beach, he saw not anger or caution, but something raw, hope, fragile and terrifying. "I don't want to need you," she whispered. "I taught myself not to need anyone. It was the only way to survive." "I know. And I'm scared that if I let myself believe you, if I let Noah believe you, and then you leave—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Hank reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. He touched her face, his thumb brushing away tears. "I'm scared too." "Of what?" "Of being terrible at this. Of fucking up. Of being like my dad. Present, but absent." His hand trembled slightly. "But I'm more scared of the alternative, of living the rest of my life knowing I had a chance and I was too afraid to take it." The air between them was charged, heavy with 2 years of words unsaid and chances not taken. Outside, someone laughed, high and bright, the sound of people who didn't carry this much history. "I loved you," Skylar said suddenly, "before everything fell apart. I loved you so much it terrified me." "Past tense," she hesitated. "I don't know, I thought I was over it, over you. And then you were standing on that beach looking lost and holding that stupid expensive camera and—" She shook her head. "I don't know what I feel anymore." "That's okay, is it?" "Yeah." He dropped his hand. "You don't owe me anything, Skylar. Not forgiveness, not another chance, nothing. The only person I need to prove myself to is Noah. And if that means I move to LA and we figure out co-parenting and nothing more than that, then—" He swallowed. "Then that's what we do." She studied his face for a long moment. "You really would do that? Move across the country just to be near him?" "Without question." "What about the company?" "They'll be fine. There's a dozen people who could step into my role tomorrow. Smart people. Better at the job than I ever was, probably." He meant it. "The company doesn't need me. Noah does." A sound from the bedroom. A soft whimper, not quite awake. Skylar immediately moved toward the door, maternal instinct overriding everything else. Hank heard her voice, low and soothing, then Noah's sleepy response. She came back out a minute later. "He's going back down, just needed his elephant." "Does he always sleep with it?" "Every night. My mum gave it to me when I found out I was pregnant. Said every kid needs a friend." She sat back on the bed. "I used to talk to him at night before he was born. Tell him about my day, about the world he was coming into. Sometimes I'd tell him about you." Hank's breath caught. "I'd tell him his dad was brilliant and ambitious and terrible at expressing emotion, that you probably wouldn't know what to do with a baby, but you'd figure it out because you figured everything out eventually." She looked at her hands. "And then, after I couldn't reach you, I stopped. Started telling him it was just going to be us, that we didn't need anyone else." "But you did." "Yeah, I did." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Needed help with groceries, needed someone to hold him while I showered, needed someone to tell me I was doing okay when it felt like I was drowning. My mom flew out twice. Julia came and stayed for a week, but it wasn't—" She stopped. "It wasn't you." The admission cost her something. Hank could see it in the way her shoulders curved inward, like she was protecting herself from her own words. "I'm here now," he said quietly. "For how long?" "As long as you'll let me be." She looked at him then, really looked at him, like she was trying to see past the promises and the fear to whatever truth lived underneath. Hank let her, didn't hide, didn't deflect. Finally, she nodded. Okay. We try. Really try. Not vacation try, real life try." Her voice was firm now, the decision made. "You move to LA, not next year, not after some transition period. Within 2 months, you find a place near us, not in our building, we're not ready for that, but close enough that you can be there when Noah needs you. Done. And we set up a real custody schedule, official, legal. So Noah has consistency, whatever you want. And you see a therapist." This one seemed to surprise her, like she hadn't planned to say it. For real, not just the executive coach bullshit, someone who can help you deal with whatever made you run in the first place. Hank bristled instinctively, then caught himself. She was right. A few good intentions weren't going to rewire 35 years of programming. "I'll find someone," and he agreed. Skylar stood, walked to the window. The water was barely visible now, just darkness and the occasional glint of moonlight. This doesn't mean we're getting back together. I know. It means we're figuring out how to be parents, together. That's it. Okay. And if you hurt him, if you promise to be there and then disappear, I will make sure you never see him again. I don't care how many lawyers you have. I won't. She turned to face him. How do you know? Because, he searched for the right words, because I know what it feels like to have a father who's physically present, but emotionally gone. I know what that does to a kid. The way you grow up thinking love is something you have to earn, something conditional. He met her eyes. I won't do that to him. I won't be that person. Okay. She nodded slowly. Then we have a deal. They shook hands, formal, almost absurd given everything, but it felt important. A contract, a promise made concrete. Hank's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. You should probably check that, Skylar said. It's not important. Your company is literally having a crisis. That's pretty important. Not compared to this. He pulled the phone out, glanced at the screen, 17 missed calls, 43 unread emails, then powered it off without opening a single one. They'll survive one more night without me. I've made them wait this long. They can wait a little longer. Skylar smiled, small, cautious, but real. You're different. Am I? Yeah. The old you would have answered that call before the first ring finished. The old me was an idiot. He wasn't all bad. Her expression softened. He was just scared and bad at asking for help. Still am. Then get better. She moved toward the door. You should go. Get some sleep. We've got breakfast tomorrow, actual breakfast with my mom who's going to have a million questions about our conversation. I can handle Linda. Can you? No, probably not. He paused at the door. Thank you for giving me this chance. Don't thank me yet. Thank me in 2 months when you're still showing up. I will be. We'll see. He left, walked through the resort alone, past happy families and couples and people whose lives weren't this complicated. His suite felt empty when he got there. Too big, too clean, too much like a place where nobody actually lived. He stood on the balcony and called his lawyer. It was 2 a.m. in Chicago. David answered on the 4th ring, voice thick with sleep. Hank, what's wrong? I need you to draft my resignation letter and start looking at property in Silver Lake, something near Sunset Junction. He paused. And find me a therapist in Los Angeles, someone who specializes in... He stopped, unsure what the term was. Someone who can help me figure out how not to be my father. Silence on the other end. Then, are you serious? Completely. What about the company? They'll be fine. Better than fine. Hank looked out at the darkness, the water somewhere beyond it. But my son won't be fine if I'm not there. So that's where I need to be. Hank! I know it sounds crazy. Maybe it is crazy, but I'm done making the wrong choice. He felt certain about this, more certain than he'd been about anything in years. Draft the letter. I'll sign it when I get back. He hung up before David could argue. Then he sat on the balcony and watched the sky start to lighten, thinking about Noah's laugh and Skylar's tears and the way his son's hand had felt in his, small and trusting, and proof that some things were worth more than empire building. By the time the sun came up, Hank White had made his choice. He just hoped he could live up to it. Can you rebuild yourself into someone worth believing in, or are we all just prisoners of who we used to be? The apartment in Silver Lake had terrible water pressure and a radiator that clanked like someone was hitting it with a wrench, but the landlord allowed dogs and didn't ask too many questions about credit checks. Hank signed the lease on a Tuesday and moved in on Thursday with 2 suitcases and a mattress delivered from someplace on Sunset that promised same-day service. It wasn't the penthouse in Lincoln Park. It wasn't even close. It was better. Now, 18 months later, the place actually looked lived in. Books on the shelves, mostly children's books, but also some novels Skylar had recommended. A coffee maker he'd learned to use without burning himself. Noah's drawings taped to the fridge, abstract explosions of color that meant something important if you asked him to explain. A couch that sagged in the middle. Dishes in the sink from breakfast because he'd been running late getting Noah to preschool. Normal chaos. The good kind. Hank stood in the kitchen, watching light filter through the window over a courtyard where someone was practicing guitar badly. His phone sat on the counter, silent. He'd gotten better about that. The constant checking, the phantom vibrations, the anxiety that he was missing something important. Therapy helped. Dr. Chen twice a week for the first 6 months, now once a week. She told him early on that his relationship with work was compensatory behavior, trying to fill the void left by emotional neglect with achievement and external validation. He'd argued with her about that for 3 sessions before admitting she was right. Turned out you couldn't think your way out of childhood trauma. You had to feel it, process it, learn new patterns. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done. Harder than building a company. Harder than navigating board politics or closing impossible deals, because it required him to be vulnerable in ways that made his teeth ache. But it was working. His phone buzzed. A text from Skylar. Running 10 min late. Noah wants to show you something he made at school. Prepare yourself. He smiled. Texted back, can't wait. The doorbell rang at exactly 4:17 p.m. Hank opened it to find Noah, now 4 years old, taller, his face losing that baby roundness, holding what appeared to be a sculpture made entirely of popsicle sticks and glitter. I made a spaceship, Noah announced, thrusting it forward. Glitter rained onto the floor. That's incredible. Hank crouched down to examine it properly. Does it have a name? The fast one. Perfect name. Skylar stood in the doorway, keys in hand, looking tired but amused. She'd cut her hair shorter, just above her shoulders now, and had paint on her jeans from a photo shoot she'd done that morning. Her work was picking up gallery shows in LA and San Francisco, a profile in National Geographic about her refugee camp documentation. She was thriving. Sorry about the glitter, she said. His teacher has no concept of consequences. It's fine, adds character. Hank stood. You want to come in? I made too much coffee. She hesitated. They still did this dance sometimes, negotiating boundaries, then nodded. Just for a minute. Noah was already inside, running toward the bookshelf where Hank kept the train set they'd built together. The kid knew the layout of this place as well as his own home. Spent 3 nights a week here, sometimes 4 if Skylar had a work trip. The custody arrangement had evolved organically. Nothing court-ordered, just 2 adults figuring it out as they went. Some weeks were smooth. Some weeks they argued about bedtimes or screen time or whether Noah was old enough for a bike. Normal parent stuff. Skylar took the coffee he offered, leaned against the counter. How was your meeting? Good. Weird, but good. Hank had taken a consulting role with a small AI startup advising on security infrastructure. Part-time, flexible, nothing that required him to sacrifice his life. They want me to come on as CTO. Are you going to? I don't know. It'd be more hours, more responsibility. He sipped his coffee. I told them I'd think about it. The old you would have said yes immediately. The old me made a lot of mistakes, she smiled. They'd fallen into this rhythm, easy teasing, comfortable silences. Not quite friends, not quite more than that. Something undefined that worked for now. How's the gallery prep going? He asked. Chaotic. I'm second-guessing every photo. She ran a hand through her hair. The opening's in 3 weeks. I keep thinking nobody's going to show up. They will. Your work is incredible. You have to say that. I really don't. He met her eyes. It's true. You're the most talented person I know. She looked away, but he caught the smile. Flattery won't get you extra custody time. Worth a shot. Noah appeared with 2 trains. Dad, you're the blue one. I'm red. We're racing. Dad. The word still hit him sometimes, this casual ownership, this identity he'd earned over months of showing up. Doctor's appointments and playground trips and reading the same bedtime story 17 nights in a row. The boring, beautiful work of being present. They played trains for 20 minutes while Skylar answered emails on her phone. Then Noah wanted a snack. Then he wanted to show Hank a new song he'd learned. Then he needed help with a puzzle. The rhythm of a 4-year-old's attention span, chaotic and perfect. At 5:30, Skylar stood. We should get going. Dinner with my mom. Tell Linda I said hi. She wants to know when you're coming to her book club. Apparently they're reading a memoir about fatherhood and she thinks you'd have opinions. I have many opinions about fatherhood. Most of them involve apologizing. Skylar laughed, a real laugh, the kind that crinkled her eyes. You're doing better than you think. Am I? Yeah. She touched his arm, brief but warm. You are. Noah hugged him goodbye, tight, unself-conscious. The way kids hugged when they knew you'd be there tomorrow. Love you, Dad. Love you too, buddy. They left. The apartment felt quieter, but not empty. Hank cleaned up the trains, swept up the glitter that would probably never fully disappear, loaded the dishwasher. Normal evening tasks, the kind he used to pay someone else to do. His laptop sat on the coffee table. He opened it, checked email out of habit. A message from his former CFO at CipherCore. Stock was up. The Microsoft deal had gone through after all. The company was thriving under new leadership. They didn't need him. Turned out nobody was irreplaceable. He closed the laptop, thought about the consulting offer. The part of him that used to need achievement, need validation, stirred slightly. But it was quieter now, easier to ignore. Dr. Chen had asked him last session what success looked like now. He'd struggled to answer. Success used to be quantifiable. Revenue, valuation, market share. Now it was. What? Noah's laugh. Skylar trusting him enough to co-parent without lawyers, waking up without the constant anxiety that he was failing at being human. Maybe that was enough. His phone buzzed. A text from Skylar. Noah says he forgot his elephant at your place. Can you bring it tomorrow? He found the stuffed elephant wedged between the couch cushions. Texted back, got it. See you at drop-off. Then, after a pause, thanks for the coffee. Her response came a minute later. Any time. Hank sat on his sagging couch in his mediocre apartment with terrible water pressure, holding a stuffed elephant that smelled like sunscreen and childhood. Outside, someone's car alarm went off. The guitar player was still practicing, slightly better now. Life happening in all its mundane glory. 2 years ago, he'd been in Maui taking photographs of sunsets he didn't see, running from a life that felt too big and too empty. Now he was here, present, imperfect, trying. Some days were hard. Some days he still wanted to check out, retreat into work or distance or whatever protective mechanism he'd spent 35 years perfecting. Some days he argued with Skylar about things that didn't matter. Some days Noah threw tantrums and Hank had no idea what to do, but he stayed. He showed up, he learned. And slowly, so slowly he almost didn't notice, he was becoming someone his son could count on. Someone he could count on. The sun was setting over Silver Lake, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Hank stood at his window, watching it. No camera this time. Just him and the moment and the knowledge that tomorrow he'd wake up and do it again. Show up, be present, love his son. It wasn't the life he'd planned. It was better than anything he could have imagined. Sometimes the life we think we want isn't the life we actually need. Sometimes success isn't measured in dollars or achievements, but in showing up, day after day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Hank learned that the expensive way, through loss and regret and nearly missing the most important thing that ever happened to him. But he also learned that it's never too late to choose differently, to be better, to become the person your child, and yourself, deserves. Parenthood doesn't come with a manual. Neither does healing from the wounds your own parents left. But both are possible if you're willing to do the work. To be vulnerable, to admit you don't have all the answers and ask for help anyway. The greatest inheritance you can leave isn't money or success. It's presence. It's love. It's showing a child that they matter more than anything else in the world. Hank found that truth on a beach in Maui, staring at eyes that mirrored his own, and it changed everything.